Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking. And I'm your host, Mike Williams. We have a great show for you tonight, and it is live, so please feel free to send in your questions via the chat box or by email. The email address is sageofquay, that's Q-U-A-Y, at AOL.com. Our guest tonight is a very good friend and a colleague, Jennifer Catlin. Jen is a certified master hypnotherapist, a highly skilled spiritual regressionist, a longtime teacher and continued student of yoga and meditation, and a mindfulness coach. She holds a dual BA in psychology and elementary education, a master's in school psychology. Jen also completed the Duke University program for Integrative Medicine and Mindfulness. She is a member of the International Association of Counselors and Therapists and a contributing author to the online publication Lightworkers World. Her practice is The Mindful Way, and it's located in Cary, North Carolina. So, Jen, with that very impressive resume, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Now, Jen, I thought to kick things off tonight, because a lot of our listeners wonder about how our guests got to where they're at, how they got into hypnosis, how they got to study mindfulness. So I was wondering if you could just take our audience through your trek. How did you come to do what you're doing today, and how did it all start?
Sure. Well, I think it was a culmination of life events, probably starting from childhood. But my first formal introduction to mindfulness was actually when I was in graduate school, and I was introduced to the works of Jon Kabat-Zinn. And that's when I began practicing mindfulness meditation and became interested in yoga from there. And as a school psychologist, one of my favorite activities to use in counseling sessions with children and teens was guided imagery. And I expanded and began using this in yoga class as well, not realizing that I was also going through a process of hypnosis at the time. I didn't realize that it was a very similar technique to what I was already using. And so fast forward several years later, I had a series of synchronistic events within my life that led to a pretty profound spiritual awakening. And through all of that, I had gone through the Duke Integrative Medicine Mindfulness training for professionals for my own personal benefit to deepen my practice. And at the same time was going through a spiritual awakening and shift. And all of that led to one of Brian Weiss's books actually was placed into my hands by a friend and colleague, and it just triggered something that I knew it was something I needed to explore, and it all took off from there.
Well, Brian Weiss's books seem to be a cornerstone for a lot of people becoming awakened and having that shift.
Yes, I agree. I get a lot of clients in my office, especially for spiritual types of sessions, who really were brought in because they were curious by things they read, and it triggered a sense of knowing that they report that they've always had, but didn't quite have words to put to.
Yeah, he's done some fantastic work, Brian, and also Michael Newton. Now, Jen, I was wondering if you could explain mindfulness. What exactly is mindfulness, and how does that benefit someone? Because I don't think many people understand it.
Sure. It is becoming somewhat of a buzzword these days, and especially within the medical community. But it really is simply about being present in everyday life. So mindfulness is being present to our experiences, paying attention on purpose to our experiences with a sense of openness and compassion. And I really, when I explain it to clients, I really like to use the image of a butterfly with two wings. And on one of those wings is our awareness or attention. And so we're paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, sensory experiences, really just being present in the moment, whether that moment is pleasant or unpleasant. And on the second wing of that butterfly is compassion. And it's compassion toward all of our experience, whether it be emotions, thoughts, behaviors. And really that butterfly can't fly without both wings present.
Do you find, Jen, with everything that's going on in people's lives, all the distractions and running around, running their life, going to work, taking care of the kids. When somebody calls you up to be coached on mindfulness, how does that work? How do you get them into that place, into that space?
Well, it's first a matter of discussing what their intention is and what they are looking for to gain from the experience. But ultimately, in mindfulness, we're not really striving to get to a certain place. It's more about being present with where we are. So there are a variety of practices, many different mindfulness practices, and it's more a matter of guiding people through different practices, and some may resonate more than others, and some may be supportive in certain moments than others. There are formal seated practices with mindfulness meditation, and some of those may focus on the breath or even a visual object, and there are other practices that may focus on sound or even movement practices such as mindful walking or walking meditation. So it's really a matter of becoming familiar with a variety of practices to then open to what is most supportive in each moment.
Now, does a client have to see you often to be coached in mindfulness, or is this something they come once, they come twice, and how does that work?
It really depends on the person. If a person is wanting individual instruction on mindfulness practices, there are a variety of products out there that a person can use at home to become familiar with mindfulness. It's really a matter of, as we sit and become present with our experiences, at times it's common for various emotions to arise. Sometimes people might experience anxiety or boredom or whatever that happens to be. And so that's when it can be really helpful to discuss what kinds of techniques we can use to work with some of the unpleasant stuff that comes up. Because really in life, in silence, we can no longer distract ourselves from what may be unpleasant within our subconscious. And so we're learning to turn toward that and open to it rather than turning away and resisting the unpleasant.
And we had a question, Jen, in the chat room, the difference between mindfulness and meditation. Could you help us with that?
Well, sure. There are mindfulness meditation practices. So there are formal practices which are meditation practices. And those are used more as an anchor to help us, remind us to be present and mindful in daily life. So the actual practice of mindful living is more of the informal practice where in day-to-day life with daily tasks, it's just a matter of bringing our mind back to the here and now. Our mind is frequently distracted and unfocused. For example, when we're brushing our teeth or showering or any of those tasks we do automatically on a daily basis, it's very common for our minds to wander to other thoughts or to start thinking about the to-do list or work meeting. And so this is normal. And the practice of mindfulness at that point is just noticing the mind has wandered. And rather than judging ourselves or beating ourselves up for not being present, we just very gently bring back the mind and redirect it to the present moment of perhaps feeling the bristles of the toothbrush on our teeth or feeling the warm water washing over our skin, whatever that present moment entails.
Okay, so I would think in today's society that would take some work. I'm just, as you're explaining it, I'm thinking about myself, and I'm driving in the car, and instead of being in the moment, my hands on the steering wheel and all that, I'm typically, like most people, projecting out where I'm going, what I've got to do for the day. So I've got to do a better job myself of pulling back and getting in the moment.
We all do. I've been doing this practice for many years. And like I said, I went to Duke to deepen my personal practice. But I know some friends of mine who have spent a couple years straight dedicating their lives to this practice, and other friends and colleagues who teach us on a daily basis. And there's no end goal. There's nothing we're striving for with mindfulness. It is a journey, and it's a practice for all of us. We are never going to be perfect. There's never a state of perfection that's achieved. It's really the life journey is about the process of wandering and coming back and wandering and coming back. And that is, it's a lifelong process.
I mean, it sounds like it would be. Now,
Yeah.
You and I in the past have had conversations about mindfulness and how mindfulness is a form of hypnosis. And you've described this and expressed this to me in the past. So I was wondering if we can just maybe make that segue from mindfulness to hypnosis, and by bridging it a little bit by explaining what you mean by mindfulness and hypnosis being related.
Sure. They're similar. They're not exactly the same. When we think of hypnosis sessions, typically a person will come in for a hypnosis session with a goal in mind. And so we're working to change behavior in some way or to explore spiritually. But there's some type of goal that is being sought out. Mindfulness practice, especially mindfulness meditation, we're not having a goal other than practicing being present with the present moment. So, however, when you're doing the formal practice of seated meditation, the mind is pretty much going into a state of hypnosis, which really all that means is a slower, more focused, concentrated brainwave state.
Okay, so what you're explaining is they're getting into that state of mind, that brainwave state, and they're very focused and very much concentrating on where they're at and what they're doing.
Yeah, whatever their experience is in that moment, depending on what type of mindfulness meditation practice they might be engaging in. If they're using the breath as a focus, then it's
Yes.
practice. Not saying that behavior modification can't result from the practice, because it's been proven that that does happen. But we're not going into mindfulness meditation with the intention of changing behavior.
Okay, I understand. Alrighty, so then why don't we move to changing behavior and moving into the hypnosis aspect of your practice and the work that you do. Could you just explain to us a little bit about what hypnosis is?
Sure. In the sessions that I offer, there are many different techniques for emerging and getting into a state of hypnosis. The process that resonates most with me is a process of progressive relaxation. And so I'll use some imagery and just really dropping into, I do combine mindfulness a lot.
I was going to ask you that if you combined it.
I do, especially when it really depends. If I tend to get people that have very strong analytical, logical minds, I will use it more often. It just helps people. For example, one of the mindfulness meditations, and I put this on my CD, is a body scan, and it'll just have you drop in and focus on various parts of the body to become aware of what is going on in the body. And that just helps the person to get out of their head, especially when the thoughts are, running wild. So I will often use various mindfulness techniques to help people become more present and out of that worrying mind or the racing thoughts that might be experienced. But with hypnosis, so I'm guiding people to become more relaxed. And then once they're in that relaxed state, I am then using imagery and other techniques. I do offer some direct and indirect suggestion techniques, but I don't rely on those solely. A lot of my sessions are very interactive and client-centered, and I know yours are as well. So those are the types of techniques that I'm using then to reach the subconscious mind and to find out what some of those repressed emotions or thoughts or beliefs are to help people then change their behavior.
Okay, so Jen, when people contact you for hypnosis to come in for a session, what types of behavior typically, when they connect with you, are they trying to change and shift?
I offer sessions for a variety of purposes. I offer clinical sessions for people that some people are coming in because they'd like to lose weight. Others might be looking to quit smoking. And a lot of clients I work a lot with emotions. I think partly because that's been my background, being a psychologist. So it resonates with me. I get a lot of clients who experience anxiety and fear and are working through those emotions, which tend to control a lot of their behavior. And much of our behavior is actually driven by the subconscious mind. I'm not sure if a lot of people realize that. And then, so there are a lot of people who come in and really it boils down to building up a sense of self-confidence, self-worth, self-compassion. And then I also get a lot of people coming in for spiritual exploration, such as past life regression and life between lives regression.
Right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dedicate the second half of the show just to talk about past lives and life between lives, because it really is so fascinating. But if we just right now just focus again on the clinical aspect, I had a question for you. When a client calls you and asks how many sessions is it going to take to get through a fear, to get through stress and anxiety, what do you tell them? How many sessions does it take to get through various different types of issues and behavior change?
That also depends upon the client. What I typically say to people, for most people on average, I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 sessions is typical. I've had some people resolve it in less, and I've had some people move through rarely needing more. I would say 3 to 4 is typically average for most people. In my practice, I have had a couple of people who have chosen to come back monthly just because they like the relaxation aspect, but many people don't. They learn the techniques to use themselves in their daily life. But yeah, I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 sessions is average.
Right. So do you get clients that come in and thinking it's a silver bullet, one session and everything is fixed up?
At times.
At times?
At times that can happen, yes. I try, when I'm talking to clients before they come into the office to be clear that this is a process and it has likely taken years of subconscious beliefs and thoughts to be repressed, and it's going to take some time to work with those, allowing them to surface, and then continuing that work, like I said, is a lifelong process. So typically clients will learn techniques to move through that anxiety and to really honor it and have that conversation with it and gain some awareness and insight as to what that's about and what it's really needing. And then from then on, what happens is at some point in life, those emotions can be re-triggered. That's not uncommon and that's normal. It doesn't mean they didn't resolve it. What's different is that they now have techniques to work with that. We experience fear and other emotions for a reason, and we need to experience those emotions. It's part of being human. So it doesn't mean the emotions go away 100% ever, because that would be taking away our humanness. It means we learn techniques so that those emotions are not driving our behavior. It wakes us up from that automatic pilot response, and so we can then respond from a place of conscious awareness.
And how do you deal with questions that come up where people's perceptions or potential clients' perceptions, Jen, are skewed by what they see on television and what they see in the movies with regard to what hypnosis is about?
That's actually pretty common. I get that question a lot from clients. I tell them that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. It's actually a process of giving themselves permission to relax and let go. It is not possible for any person on this planet to have control over another person. If that were possible, then people, would really be ruling the world in everybody's behavior. All of that stuff that's shown on TV is for entertainment purposes. And the people that are engaging in those behaviors that may be embarrassing are allowing themselves and convincing themselves that they want to engage in that. So if a person does not want to do certain things or believe certain things, hypnosis is not going to get through their conscious mind. There's a protective mechanism that comes up. But all hypnosis is a matter of self-hypnosis. And at any point in time, a person can just simply open their eyes and they're not asleep. They're conscious and in control the whole time and aware the whole time. The conscious mind is still present. I kind of explain it almost like you're walking two worlds where you have the conscious mind, which is present, and you also have the subconscious, which is accessible in that moment. And so it's just a matter of allowing themselves permission to relax, to access the subconscious while the conscious mind still is there with them the whole time.
Okay, so basically, the client is in control and the practitioner is really facilitating a session. If a person does not want to go into hypnosis, they're not going to go into hypnosis. And even when they're in hypnosis, the practitioner or the hypnotherapist does not have control over that person.
Correct. Yeah, that's a very common misconception. We really go into a state of hypnosis on our own, typically several times a day, always when we're falling asleep and when we're waking up. It's sort of that in-between, more relaxed state where you're not fully asleep, you're not fully awake. And even a lot of times when we're driving a car or watching a movie or reading a book or daydreaming or worrying, those are all often states of hypnosis. So it's nothing that everybody hasn't gone into. It's really just a natural brainwave state.
Right. That's the thing. That's the key part. It is natural. It's a natural state of mind that we go into during various parts of the day. Now, Jen, we're going to take a break in about 3 minutes here. But before we do, you had mentioned a CD, and we had a comment in the chat room asking about the CD. So could you tell us about it?
Sure. I just released my first CD, there are 3 tracks on there. It's called Being Peace, Mindfulness Meditations for Cultivating Calmness. And it's a CD with 3 different tracks, including 3 different mindfulness meditations. There are many other mindfulness meditations out there. They're all about 17 to 20 minutes in length. And there's a breath awareness, a body scan, and a loving kindness meditation on there. And I give plenty of space. For example, there are 5 to 7 minute breaks of silence in the breath awareness as I'm guiding people through to allow ample space for people to really drop in to that silence and spaciousness to experience the meditation.
You need to send your colleague Mike one.
I will do that. I'm working on several others. The others will include more guided imagery in them to work through various emotions. But the next one I'm working on is actually for children, to help children with relaxation.
Okay. And so I know you're also, you had mentioned, I saw on your website, you're working on a book?
I am. I think it's going to be, a work in progress for a while, potentially years. I'm writing it as it comes to me, really through spirit. It's a kind of a book based upon my personal experience and some things that I've learned through my spiritual awakening, and really highlighting the synchronicities in my life, as many of them are quite profound. And I tend to have an analytical, skeptical mind, and it was through these experiences that I had this mass awakening. Okay, well, take your time. You have plenty of time to write that book. Spirit will help you. Yes. And we are at the bottom of the hour now, Jen, and we need to take a short break. And when we come back, we will continue our discussion. Part 2, or the second half of this, we're going to talk about past lives and between lives regression, which I know many, many people are very, very interested in. So we'll hit that as soon as we come back from break. And welcome back, my friends. Our guest tonight is Jennifer Catlin. And Jen, let's move to past lives. And the first question would be, what is a past life regression for those that are listening that are just not quite sure what it is? It's a type of hypnotherapy session that is offered where a person will be regressed to a time in their soul's history, to another life at another time, where they will gain various insights. And most people come in just with some curious exploration, and I will work our way back through time and eventually to the past life, to another past life that is significant for them today. And it's where we'll explore some of the connections to their life today to find out what is important and how that can assist them with their life now. So, Jen, when clients come to you or give you a call to inquire about past lives or to come in for past lives, what is the client getting from that session? Are they working on particular issues, or is it just exploration? How does that work? Most often it's exploration. However, some people may come with specific questions that we'll explore in the life review, which is part of the session. I do sometimes get requests for a past life session because, for example, somebody may want to heal pain in their body or because they're experiencing a specific phobia. I'm really cautious about offering a past life session for that. I will use regression technique in clinical sessions to explore specific issues. However, a past life session is typically more for curious exploration and to find out what's important for a person today. I'm cautious about assuming that physical pain or phobias or anything else experienced is automatically a result of a past life, because there's so much stuff in our subconscious from this current life that is a result of this current life. And so I just caution all practitioners to assume and offer past life sessions specifically to resolve something that a client comes in with. You know, it's not to say that it can't resolve. I've witnessed some really miraculous things through past life sessions that have resolved, but we can't assume that as a practitioner. It needs to be client-centered. And so we have to allow flexibility for the client to go to the source of the issue rather than us as a practitioner guiding somebody to assume it's from a past life.
No, I think that's very sound advice. Now, Jen, some of our listeners may be wondering and asking, well, how exactly does a past life session work? What happens during a session?
We'll go through a process of guided relaxation. It's usually a little bit longer than it is. We take more time to get into that relaxed state than we typically do in a clinical session. And using a process of guided relaxation, we'll begin to then work our way back through time through some conscious memory to sort of warm up the mind to those sensory experiences. And then working to pre-conscious memory to very young childhood, and then backing up to the experience in the womb, which is womb regression, and asking some questions about their experience in the womb, and then eventually backing up to a past life. And typically somebody most often will go through one significant lifetime and will hit some of the key major events or points within that session or within that lifetime, and then go through the death scene and into the spirit world. And that's where a life review is conducted. And we ask various questions about that life and its importance and connections to this life today. And that's where we can also explore with any specific questions they may have at that time.
Now, Jen, when the clients talk to you about the experience afterwards, how do they express how those memories come? Is it slow? Is it quick? Do they have to think about it, or is it more spontaneous and fluid?
Spontaneous and fluid. You know, it's not about a person being in their thinking mind and generating these thoughts. It's really about accessing the subconscious, and that comes through as spontaneous experience. For some people, it may come through very quickly, and others it may be a little bit of a slower process, but it's typically a spontaneous process that's not generated within the thinking mind. And it's really difficult to talk about unless a person has actually experienced it.
Well, now, the books, you mentioned Brian Weiss's book, and I had mentioned earlier Michael Newton's books. Excellent, excellent books, by the way. But a lot of the books that are written focus on visuals, seeing. And is that how most people experience their past lives? Is it seeing, is it visual, or does it encompass other sensory perceptions?
It's a variety. It really depends upon the person and the specific day. I can say that for myself, I've had several past life sessions myself. You know, I have experienced all of them differently. Sometimes they're very visual and very vivid, like a dream. And other times it's much more of, it can be sometimes a visceral experience. Other times anything, and it may be that I just sense it or feel it, and yet it's still coming spontaneously. And I find with clients, it's the same thing. Some people will experience it visually, and others will say, but I don't see anything. And you don't have to see anything. It can be, you know, a sensation, a memory, a word, a message that comes through spontaneously in different ways.
How about, Jen, the details that they get? You know, a lot of times also when folks read the books, they think they're going to get first name, last name, street address, town they lived in, their license plate number. those types of details. So what's your experience with regard to what actually comes through?
That also varies. I have had some sessions with clients and myself that are extremely detailed, and yes, names, dates, all of that will come through spontaneously. And I've had many sessions where other things will come through vividly, but not so much the very specific details of location or name or date. And what we find is that those things which our human mind wants to try to latch onto for verification aren't important. It's the overall message of what is important for me to know now and how can this help me in my current life.
We have two questions, Jen, to piggyback on what you had just explained to the audience. One is, how far back in past lives can one go? And the second question is, are all lives on this planet, or can we incarnate into other realms or realities?
Sure. Well, how far back we can go, that varies. I mean, we can go back to some pretty ancient times in civilizations on this planet. People tend to go to a lifetime that's important to know now. And I've had some people who regress very far back to ancient civilizations, and I've had others regress to more recent lifetimes. So there is no one set answer for that. It really depends upon what comes through for a person. There's no limit really though to how far back we can go. We can go back as far as caveman times or beyond, depending upon what the incarnation was on this planet. And as far as, was the other question if we incarnate on Earth only?
Is it only Earth?
No. At least, I'm never going to say I know anything 100% because I'm a human too, and what's coming is coming through my mind. However, with all of the sessions that have been done and all of the research that's been done, I'm saying no based on all of that and all of the experience I've had with other clients as well, as other facilitators, that it has been reported numerous times that there are incarnations on other planets and other worlds. Some may be similar to Earth, and others may be vastly different in experience.
We had another question come through, Jen, where someone in the chat room had asked, how does a past life help somebody in their current life?
Well, it can help somebody to gain a sense that, again, this is one where it can help people in a variety of ways. It can help somebody gain a sense and connect with their life purpose of why they are here. It can help people to simply connect with their true essence and their soul and the immortality of their soul, really. So it takes them beyond the ego and beyond the struggles of humanity to see the much bigger picture, that there's something beyond this of importance. It can also help people gain some understanding about relationships in their lives. There certainly have been cases where some people have resolved some medical ailments or phobias or other things through past lives. Again, I never assume that it's coming from that place, but there are instances where that has happened.
Now, once they go through the past life and they go through a death scene in that past life, and then they cross over, and you had mentioned earlier that they cross over and then they go into the spirit world, what's that like? How do clients report back to you that experience? What happens when they hit that death scene and then they head to the spirit world?
Sure. It's funny because a lot of the background knowledge that I've gained about this process have come from the research of Dr. Newton. And yet I've worked with clients through Life Between Lives sessions who don't know who Dr. Newton is or hasn't read any of his books. And it's amazing the similarity of details that they report when they're in that deep theta state. And so basically what happens is we cross over and sometimes may be met by our spirit guide often or another being to help us cross over. Sometimes we just go straight on through ourselves, and it's our energy, our soul energy may go through a cleansing process to heal and rebalance from any effects of an incarnation. And then from there, we meet with a council of elders which will review some of the life lessons that we've learned and gain any insight and information about that and how we've grown and changed. And there are different soul activities that we may be involved in, such as learning to work with energy or create, or there are many different activities there. We also may visit our soul group of other beings who we tend to incarnate with frequently, or other beings who may be working on some similar lessons with us and have similar sort of, I don't want to say level, but energetic qualities. Many different activities there's still so much that we don't know, that we're still learning about the spirit world. I think the whole next layer of information is just beginning to come through.
Now, one of the things that you just mentioned was the consistency. And I have to agree with you 100% because, you and I do the same work. And one of the constant variables is the consistency of what the clients report back. What happens when the soul leaves the body, that whole energetic state, it's very, very consistent. So, we have our clients that come in and they all basically report back experiences which are very much the same. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And as much as I've done this, I still sometimes am in awe of what comes through, especially when people haven't read the books and have no basis for this, and they're people from all different faith backgrounds and belief systems. And once they're in that state, as we talked about, things come through spontaneously, and it's not coming from the conscious ego mind. It's coming from this other place of knowing and from that consciousness within us.
We had a question come through about Atlantis and whether you've had a client go back to Atlantis. I guess they're asking whether Atlantis is real or not. I don't know whether you've had a client go back there or not. So if not, that's fine. Right.
I personally have not. I have heard that some others have. Have you personally had a client go to that?
I have not. I've had them go back to a very, very ancient times, going back into Egypt, Samaria, that type of thing there, but not back to Atlantis. However, like you, our colleagues have reported back that clients have indeed gone back to Atlantis.
Right. Yeah, I haven't experienced it personally in any sessions, but that doesn't mean it does or doesn't exist,
Exactly. Now, Jen, you started to take us into Between Lives, LBL, and your training with regard to Life Between Lives is the Michael Newton Institute.
Yes.
Fine organization. And I was wondering if you can just describe a little more detail about what exactly is a Between Lives regression, a life between lives. Is it like a past life, or is it something that's completely different?
It begins like a past life and goes far beyond that, really. We go through a similar process of relaxation. However, I explained in the past life session how we take a longer time to go into that hypnotic state than we do a clinical session. And the same is true for a Life Between Life session in comparison to a past life session. We take even longer time. And the reason for that is to get the client into the deepest theta state possible, where you can really get deep into that subconscious memory and connect deeply with the soul state. And so we're going through a process of guided relaxation and using imagery to help a person relax and let go from the thinking mind. And then working our way back through time again. We go through the same process of going back through time to preconscious memory, to womb regression, then briefly into a past life. However, the difference is we're not spending a long time in experiencing that past life like we do in a past life session. The majority of the time in a Life Between Life session is spent in the spirit world, which is how that really differs from a past life session. So we're just kind of going to the past life session as almost a doorway to then naturally lead into the spirit world. And that's where most of the session takes place. Often, well, pretty much always, in my experience, clients come in with a list of questions pertaining to this life that they want to explore in the Life Between Lives session. And they can range anywhere from things about life purpose to any challenges or experiences that they've had in this life, whether it be something emotional or with their health or specific relationships with individuals. It could be a curiosity about their soul groups or other beings they're incarnated with, or just other questions just involving their soul's history.
Do they get to visit some elders?
Yes. Oh, yes. Pretty much everybody visits the Council of Elders, which is a council of extremely wise, experienced souls who are very loving and are there to help give wisdom and answer. That's typically where a lot of these questions, in my experience, are answered for people, is in that visit with the elders.
So if I try to get this to summarize it a little bit for our audience, so the soul leaves the body at death, might go through a cleansing process you had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Once it goes through the cleansing process, the soul may meet up with its soul group. And we do have a question. Somebody in the chat room asked what a soul group is, and we'll try to get to that. We are running a little short on time. The soul will then meet up with a guide or guides. And once the soul spends some time with the guides, they being the soul, will go off and have a session or a visit with the Council of Elders, sometimes referred to as the Wise Ones. And then after that, they may go to other places within the spirit world. So the spirit world then has process and structure. Would you say that it has process and structure?
Yes, I would say that. However, I will also say that as people are reading Dr. Newton's books, he had, I think, his first experience with this with a client who regressed into the spirit world spontaneously in the 60s, as I recall. And so as people are reading the books, they're reading a lot of these stories when he was doing his research. When we do sessions now for therapeutic purposes, for exploration, there's not necessarily one set structured sort of template that it may vary as far as what stations the souls visit, depending upon what is most important for them to know today. So sessions may vary somewhat in where the soul goes or what is experienced from person to person.
What is a soul group, Jen?
What is a soul group? It's a group of beings who we are very closely connected with, other souls who we often incarnate with and change roles with. Now, it doesn't mean we're incarnated with all of them at the same time, but we often incarnate with these specific individuals and will change roles to learn different life lessons from each other. And so when people hear the word soulmate, often they're thinking about that one person, that they feel very, close bond with, or sometimes people even imagine it as being a romantic relationship type of bond, but that's not necessarily the case. We have several soulmates who incarnate with us to help each other learn important life lessons.
Right. And many times I'll get the question if, as you had just mentioned, because they believe they have a soulmate, that it's just always going to be a very loving relationship. When they come down to play what you had mentioned, that role, that part. But that's not always the case. Your soulmate or even your primary soulmate could actually play a role as an adversary. Yes. Because it's all about lessons, right? I mean, that's really what it's about. It's all about lessons.
Yes. And, from the human experience, there could be obviously a lot of emotion and hurt and anger and pain involved. But from the bigger picture, from those soul beings, there's really only love between us, and we're here to experience, because energetically there are only certain things that can be experienced in pure, energetic form. But with this denser energy and in these bodies is how we experience these emotions, and in other life lessons as our energy grows stronger through learning these lessons.
Now, Jen, just going back a little bit to, we were talking about incarnating on other planets. Do you have any experiences that we can share with the audience about what those types of experiences are? In other words, do they look like humans? Do they not look like humans? What has been your experience?
Sure. I really haven't put this out there yet. I've had personal experience that sort of arise spontaneously. But, in working with clients as well, it's not frequently that this comes up in sessions. However, it has arisen with some clients, and sometimes they can be very primitive forms of beings, more primitive than human, and other times they can be much more advanced. And the actual incarnation or body can look very different from human beings, or they can appear in a way that this person, has never recognized something in appearance this way. There are all different kinds of planets as well. Some of them may be completely covered with water. And so there are, highly intelligent life in water worlds. And like I said, some of them can be quite primitive as well.
My experience is that some of them are a lot easier than Earth.
Oh, absolutely. I do get a sense, I don't know, but I get the sense that Earth is a pretty tough school.
It's a very tough school. Absolutely. It's where the soul comes to learn its lessons and learn their lessons very quickly, because it is a very, very difficult school.
Yes.
So, but Jen, we're almost out of time. So what I would like to do is for you just to let our audience know how to contact you, your website, and all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, my contact information is on my website, so that's probably the easiest thing to refer to. My website is www.themindfulway.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, listed under The Mindful Way. And, the rest of my information I can email, and phone is an excellent way to reach me, but I always welcome any questions or insights that others have.
All right. Excellent. Jen, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the show tonight. I want to let everybody who's listening know that Jen is excellent at what she does. She really is the best. And I want you to come back on the show.
Sounds great. I'd love to. Thanks for having me, Mike.
You're very, very welcome. All righty, Jen. Thank you. And next week's show, my friends, we will be interviewing Veterans Today and Open Salon columnist Jack Hart. We will be discussing hidden and forbidden knowledge along with Mr. Hart's very popular articles on those topics, so please tune in. I want to thank everyone for listening, and thank you for your support and visiting the blog, sageofquay.com. Please check out my music and my album, Leaving Dystopia, at laboroflovemusic.com. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.